Today's speaker is my very good friend, Dr. Divu Damodaran, and he is going to be talking about technology and biological innovations transforming mariculture. Dr. Divu is currently working as scientist, Mariculture Division, at ICR Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute under the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, Government of India. He has been associated with R&D in mariculture and allied sciences since 2009. Dr. Divu has published prolifically, and recently a team led by him won the Technology Innovation Award at an international conference held at New Delhi. He has also served as a visiting scientist at University of Stirling, UK. So Divu, over to you. Divu?
Thank you, Dr. Mukta, for introduction. I think we will start with the presentations. Maybe a little bit faster I will move, and it is very preliminary presentation. It's not so in-depth thing. So please interfere in between if something extra is required or something need to cut down. Please let me know in between. Okay. So shall I share the slides?
Please. And I think we saw
Good evening. Yeah.
We saw
Shall
all
I
your
start?
slides. Yeah. Now we know your talk.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody is doing well in this global pandemic. Take care and be safe. So in this context, I am trying to brief some of the technological interventions, what CMFRA, in CMFRA, what we are trying to do the poverty alleviation or uplifting the social status of the unprivileged groups or coastal fisher flocks, and increasing the production and productivity of the mariculture sector. So my topic is transformation of mariculture sector through novel technology of India. It is considered now, it is recognized as the future farming of India also by the Honorable PM. What are all the things what we are trying to do under such mariculture is nothing, we are not in a secluded way we are working in mariculture. Instead, the various technological interventions or innovations which is happening in other IT and other related fields, we are trying to include such type of innovations into the day-to-day life of this mariculture or associated activities, so that the culture activities or the farming activities can be made profitable or more economical. So first, what is mariculture? Because everybody might have heard about aquaculture. It is also a type of aquaculture in which this aquaculture will be performed with one particular type of things, that is farming or culture of marine organisms, only marine organisms or plants of commercial importance for human well-being, and which will give some economical benefits. Such type of thing, it is called mariculture widely now, and it is one of the future farming aspects of the things. It is one of the emerging subsector in India too. Why mariculture sector is getting so important? Because it is not only in India, all over the world, it is one of the emerging food production sector, in which because it is trying to give answers to the challenges, especially for food and nutritional security. Those challenges, they are trying to do the answers for the concern, something like of national, regional, state-wise, or international or global concerns, trying to address, in which food and nutritional security parts were involved. What are the main points which is trying to address in this? Why mariculture is getting so important? Because first and foremost point is that increasing demand for fish. Now, most of the people are trying to include fish as one of their diet supplements or as a part of their diet. Starting from the strict vegetarian, in Indian context, once we are talking from the strict vegetarian concept of food, great transition has been happened in many parts of India, where that demand for fish has been increased, not only for vegetarian people, for every domain of the country, such demand has been increased. The same is the case for in global level also. The first important reason for that is, one is population growth. India is standing next to China, where in population growth, population that the youngster population is one of the working force for a country to gain economy. So such type of population is existing in India, China, and almost all Southeast Asian countries and African regions. So there the demand of this fish is very much high. And next is urbanizations. From the village level of happening for urbanization. This may be due to various reasons, maybe climate related migration, or job related migration, or getting a good livelihood. People are migrating to urban cities. In such conditions, the food or living standards or the customs what they were following previously will be getting quite much altered with the vicinity where they are living, or the society where in which they are living. So now people are taking such type of variation in their food habits, in which fish is one of the major, cheap and rich animal protein supplement. And next is affluent middle. In India, affluent middle class is one of the greater population of population, which demands fish as a main commodity in their food. And because due to their purchasing power, increased purchasing power, people can absorb that fluctuations in rate or whatever the case it is as a healthy food people try to consume in the recent days. And next is climate change. When we are looking into the different type of meat products or the protein supplement, animal protein supplements widely accepted in global level, this climate change having greatly affecting the production and productivity of animal proteins such as beef, pork, chicken, and all such things. In such cases, fish, the culture of fish or the production from the fish has not been tampered much, and it is having a certain extent of resilience over the climate changes. Next is the eradication of hunger and malnutrition. When we are looking into the countries like Africa or Southeast Asian countries or Asian regions, many poor localities where people are solely depending fish as a protein supplement for their food. The rice and fish are the main things which they are using for their daily food or daily bread and butter. It is, and it certain extent it reduce the malnutrition too. Next is the nutritional security for the next generation. Previously, I have mentioned that meat production sector or the animal protein production sector in the globe. Looking at the FAO figures, it is very evident from the graph when the main protein, that is pork or chicken, when we are looking into the production of pork and chicken with fish, how FAO has been depicted it from the period of 1960s to recent. You can clearly see that there is a staggered growth in the pig or chicken production worldwide. But when you are looking into the fish production scenario, it is steadily increasing. And when we are looking into the projections in the as a dotted lines, as an extrapolation of the existing things based on the anticipated demand for the fish, it is very now we are in 2020 and the figure still up to 2010. With the present scenario. That means that particular growth what FAO anticipated, it is happening into a certain extent, not fully, to a certain extent. So surely we can decide that this is one of the major factor which is going to affect the food industry, or which will play a key role in the national food security or global food security. When we look into the eating patterns or the fish consumption patterns, since 1960, it was around 10 kilogram per capita people used to consume as per the Global Aquaculture Alliance report. But once it has reached 2018, it has raised up to 22 kilogram. But when we are looking into the figures of 2021, it has reached around 25.2 kilogram per capita. That means tremendous increase is happening for the per capita fish demand. this is also one of the factor for taking mariculture or the aquaculture as a major domain for research and other activities. When we look into mariculture, there are two types of mariculture activities. First is coastal, or otherwise next is open sea. Coastal mariculture is the very old traditional type of mariculture activities which is practiced many Southeast Asian and African countries for a long time. In India also, when we are looking into the Indian context also, inland saline areas were used for such type of cultivation. It is something like a passive cultivation or passive culture activities, in which low saline areas where salt water or seawater which is getting into some embanked areas through ebb and flow will be retained along with the fishes or shrimps, what are all the associated fauna in that incoming water, maintaining them there for a while and subsequently capturing those things. Such a passive way of aquaculture were practiced in India, especially the Pokali fields and all. Many people might have heard also, and many might have studied also. So from that stage, now it has been advanced to a greater extent. That recent development in that one only, the various parts of aquaculture where it was integrated farming with multiple type of organisms were cultured along with fish, where one they were interconnected with the profitabilities. Next one was intercropping. That is the very recent development in the coastal aquaculture scenario. When that we will discuss little better in the subsequent slides. When we are looking into the open sea, the cage culture or the pen culture, such type of culture activities were existing from very something like 50 to 60 years time period. It was existing. So especially in Southeast Asian countries, but India is keeping its steps very recently in this cage aquaculture or mariculture domain, something from 2006 2007 period. The concerted efforts were given for such type of research activities. In this one, then subsequently it has come in such a stage that various practices were available, or package of practices were available for such type of farming, along with integrated multi-trophic aquaculture practices too. So why such type of diversified farming activities are happening? What is the importance? Why such importance has been given to mariculture systems? The first and foremost thing is that the greater number of species under captive rearing. There has been a tremendous increase in the number of species commercially can be cultivated in the confinements or open water bodies has been increased, not even increased, doubled or tripled from the number. From the initial stages, very few numbers, especially when earlier times we were listening about the Katla Rohu Mrigal, or otherwise in the global domain we are listening about salmon or such type of fishes only. But even in India, once we are looking into, there were several number of species under technologies are available with the seed availability in captive conditions. So this has been given an impetus over the diversification practices. Once the availability of seeds are more, the culture practices will increase and the type of culture practice will improve also. And next one is that developing more strains to the presently cultured species. The classical example is tilapia. Earlier, Nile tilapia, Tilapia niloticus was usually used to be used in culture practices all over the world. One of the hardy species which is involved in freshwater aquaculture and also in mariculture activities too. Subsequently, there were it is having a lot of disadvantages along with the importance also. Those were tackled with concerted efforts over strain developments, and several strains were developed over that particular species, and which catered different type of domains which the farmer was intending for. Though that also added the diversification trials. And next one is that the spatial diversification, that is many areas. Earlier there was a notion that we need to have some water bodies available in that particular culture location, or those areas there only we can think about farming or aquaculture activities. But that concept has been changed a lot, and such a spatial diversification has happened in a different type of water bodies, or even if water is not available, even it is through aquifers, people are ready to pump water, and such type of technologies has been developed, and that has made such a importance or such a momentum for diversification practices and species diversification also. And next one is that year-round culture. When we are looking into seasonal supply of seeds, which is naturally collecting, or otherwise particular climate zones happening in different agroclimatic situations in different countries or different terrains, a limited window will be open for such culture activities. So that has been through this diversification, it has come in such a stage that year-round culture practices are possible with the different type of species or strains or culture practices. The next one was the diverse culture systems. Earlier, it was something like a passive or otherwise extensive type of culture activities where we are totally depending upon a limited number of technologies or practices for culturing of such organisms. That has been changed a lot with the new technologies or new technological innovations, which has added much more easiness to such laborious culture practices and made it feasible. And this has been put another importance for this diversified culture systems, and very much even distribution of seafood productions and species in a spatial range. Why? Because earlier some species were suitable for a particular agroclimatic conditions or particular type of water bodies. That has been changed a lot with such type of interventions or concerted efforts. So in such activities, what it has happened is that many species can be cultured in multiple locations in multiple times, so that there has happened an equal distribution of many of the species. No species has been limited to a particular location. Next one is that diversification, the first and foremost, or that very important portion of this diversification effort is that it increases the profitability and resilience in aquaculture. That is the one key point which we need to keep it in mind, the profitability. When the type of species or type of culture systems or modified practices once we are looking into, it will be in such a way that people will farmers are much more knowledgeable than we researchers, because they are regularly doing the farming activities in many locations. They are something like field scientists. Farmers are the field scientists. They will be observing many more points. So when even than the ones which we are recommending, many times it has come even minor variations in some practices or some feeding levels or particular strains in a particular seasons, how the profitability can be improved, that they themselves will find it out. And once we are adding some research inputs also into that, it can be made more profitable. So when profitability matters, people will absorb adopt such type of technologies much easily than a critical new technology which is quite unfamiliar to that particular location or a particular set of farmers. So profitability will improve a lot once we are using suitable strains or a suitable type of culture practices we are applying in some domains, and which will give resilience to the aquaculture. When we are looking into that havoc which has happened with the WSSV during the shrimp culture era, which India has been faced during 90s. Such a setback has happened in the culture practices of shrimps once it was booming. So when we are introducing such type of variation, that Vanami, that species which has been brought from America, which is quite resistant to also. So such type of species which is using in the culture systems, which will give a resilience. When we are going with diversified farming practices than a monoculture or a similar type of farming technologies, which will add values to the ecosystem where it has been cultured, and it will add sustainability to the culture systems. So these three practices we need to keep in mind, that various culture practices and culture species and culture systems are the main diversification parts which is involved in our culture systems in a brief. When we are looking into that each point, what are the diversification factors in the culture systems in mariculture domain? One is with pond, pens, cage, racks or raft. In all these things, pond, pen and cages, these are all the systems which we generally used for culturing all finfishes or shellfish. Any types can be cultured in that. This rack and raft based on something like molluscan species or seaweed or algae type of species can be cultured in such type of culture systems. Based on our need, we need to choose the which is the best one suitable for our culture practices. When we are looking into the species diversification, there were so many number of species are available in finfishes, which are suitable for our agroclimatic zone or region of regional importance or regional preference for that fish, and commercial production potential or feed availability. Based on that, Now, lot many species we can select from the domain where the seeding, the hatchery technology has been standardized and seeds were available year round. So that is one of the important leap which India has made in the domain of mariculture. When we are looking into shellfishes also, a different type of, especially shellfish, generally now the culture practice restricts, especially with shrimps, especially Penaeus monodon or Lithopenaeus venami. These are all the main species which is culturing, where Lithopenaeus venami is dominating the culture domain. And now SPF stocks of monodons are also available, and the profitability of Venami has been getting quite much reduced with various factors. Where that shrimp has been originated, it is originated from America, and it is later getting exported to America, and anti-dumping duties and many other restrictions what they are making, and health status of the brood stock from which that quite much illegal seeds are coming also into the industry, which has diluted or removed the importance of Venami to a greater extent. And next one is that seaweeds. There is not much importance is getting in the field of seaweeds, especially with the national mission is diverted towards seaweed farming and all these things, especially the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana by government of India, where a huge chunk of money has been earmarked for such type of activity. Activities we are looking especially over some gracile areas. CMFRA did many more experiments and trials for farming indigenous seaweeds, especially gracilaria and all such type of seaweeds where agar, algin and carrageenan productions were made and standardized. But once the introduction with Kappa ficus, that which is not a native of Indian species, but it has been popularized quite much, and which is only the main commercially cultivating seaweed species in India. But there are many other species, but the growth, just like shrimp industry, we are considering with finfish farming system, the similar issue is there with the Kappa ficus farming with the other indigenous seaweeds. So that domain also getting more important. Concerted research efforts were going over the different type of farming activities and farming season or the methodologies which can be used in different regions of India, and that can be applied to global status also. The next one is the various culture practices, which already I have mentioned, that is extensive, something like a traditional culture practice, which I have mentioned. Then with given some input, something like feed or maintaining water exchange, it has come in such a way that modified extensive, but because we are not putting much of our efforts over that culture practices. Instead, some inputs were added so that the profitability will be little more improved. From there, it has come something like semi-intensive culture practices, where some input, something like stocking of some extra seeds of our importance or of particular value with feeding and water quality management, some scientific inputs were also employed so that the productivity can be improved. Later, it has come to intensive culture, where the total culture environment will be scientifically monitored to get more production. That has later escalated as super intensive, where more number of individuals farm, otherwise not farmable, are farming in particular culture systems with vigorous inputs such as energy, aeration, feed, water quality management, and husbandry practices. Then, after reaching all such superior degree of intensities, then later several setbacks has happened with disease outbreaks or profitability issues and marketing difficulties, especially during this corona, such type of pandemic conditions, which otherwise the world has not been witnessed earlier. Then the importance, people started realizing the importance of intercropping, that is rotation of crop with a certain degree of sustainability in the farming systems. So under this mariculture operations, we can use finfish and shellfishes in a different ways, either in pen or otherwise co-culture. Many methods can be deployed. That species, what it is there in this picture, Trachinotus blochi, especially the pompano, snub-nosed pompano, or American pompano, Florida pompano. This is one of the species which tried in India in a commercial, which is culturing in many parts of the world also. This species is such a euryhaline and eurythermal species which is having wide acceptance. It can be grown even in cages. It can be grown even in low saline ponds where shrimp culture is going on. And it is such a wonderful fish. It can be incorporated for intercropping or winter cropping. Something like temperature variation or something is existing, especially northern Indian parts where such temperature variations are very common with the summer and winter. In such conditions, many of the traditional crops, finfish or shellfish species cannot be grown in such conditions, but this particular species of blochi or otherwise Indian pompano, Trachinotus mucali, are showing wonderful growth and resilience. So this species diversification is getting of quite importance nowadays. So when we are looking into the various mariculture or operational avenues for aquaculture production in India, there are two types of systems existing in India. One is open system, where sea cage farming is the main one. Then pen culture, integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, raft, rack, long line. Different type of culture practices are available in open water systems. Then we are looking into the closed system, which is getting more again another set of importance nowadays in water in landlocked areas and others. Recirculatory aquaculture systems or in-pond recirculatory aquaculture systems or race fish. They are quite, when we are looking into the open systems, open culture systems, they are not that much will not give much financial burden, or otherwise such a clinch on the funds, it will not create much of. But when you are looking into the closed systems, it is quite labor intensive and financial oriented, and somewhat in a superlative degree of importance we need to give for these culture systems. Then only the good productivity can be achieved from these systems. So next one is that why we need to look into the sea for mariculture activities, because mariculture is quite new to India. Somewhere in 2006-7 only it has been started, which I already mentioned, but it was a practice from quite a long time in different countries all along the globe. When we are looking into it, because the classical examples, or we will get a boost or energy in the countries like Norway or Chile when we are looking into. Once these countries are also getting to marry, Norway, Chile, or such type of countries, Japan, they were getting to this mariculture, this cage farming activities, not that much recent, but somewhere around 50 to 60 years before they have started. The government looked into the systems, and with the mariculture, even we can see that with the brutal literatures are there, even the economy, the GDP of the economy in a span of 2 to 3 year time period has been doubled with the income from this such type of only one species, that is Atlantic salmon. By the culture of this Atlantic salmon, it has given such a importance to the economy. Then they realized the importance of this particular culture systems, and they put various efforts to make it more profitable, and the sustainability issues they looked into later after getting some setbacks of various diseases and problems in the genetic stock and all these things. Only later those countries were experienced the sustainability related issues. One way India has started little late, it is very good, because many of the setback these countries which already went through such type of practices has given us a scope to think or plan our systems what it is going to launch in India in a big way. So by taking all such precautionary approaches, CMFRI is making efforts to develop such systems which is profitable for farming, and it is adaptable for the farmers or the coastal fisher flock, either who do not have a land holding to do such type of aquaculture practices. So it is something like even in many aspects it got attention, especially for researchers, commercial and corporate producers in various angles. Researchers in many aspects and others for some other aspects. That increase, the main thing is that increasing consumption rate of fish and decline of wild stocks. That is one of the major thrust area has posed the government or even the policy makers to think about what is the next avenue to cater this fish demand. There only this farming activities in sea, because sea is a common property which can be utilized for such type of food production sector. And the government of India has been promoting mariculture and allied activities in various forms with various policies and all recently. Government of India has been given equal thrust to open sea mariculture, what it has been given for non-living oil and gas field mining and all these things. Such an importance has been given by Government of India for mariculture and allied activities recently, because now the government has been realized that this is one of the avenue. It can give multiple options for livelihood options and employment opportunities, and multidimensional societal development can be achieved through these areas. In India, it is very important. Why? Because most of the population resides in the coastal locations of India, and India is blessed with such a long coastline of 8,000 kilometer plus, and which is having such a production potential, and people are depending mostly on this. For them, this is such a adaptable area. Easily they can get integrated into the activities. So government has launched several mission programs such as Neel Kranti and National Action Plan for Blue Revolution Mission, and very recently PMMSY scheme. Why? Because India has to do this thing also in another aspect with in consultation with UN. India is a signatory in UN too. So as per the UN, there were several every country has to achieve many of these mentioned goals. One is that out of the sustainable goals, it is poverty alleviation, zero hunger, good health and well-being. That is 1, 2, and 3. Along with that, climate action and life below water can be satisfied with mariculture and related activities. That's the importance of this particular domain. India ranked third. Recently, India ranked third in fisheries, capture fisheries production, because Indonesia has come up very much well. And in second in aquaculture, next to China. So this mariculture, which I have earlier mentioned, this fisher block, it provides employment for around 14 million people, and it contributes greatly to 1.1% of the country's GDP and 5.15% of the agricultural GDP. So now the government has given a thrust for enhancing the fish production from 10.79 million metric ton to 15 million metric ton by 2020. So various culture, methods and practices which I have mentioned, what are the limitations of all these things? First one, in the freshwater, which is very common and wide varieties of people are practicing. The problems are land scarcity, pollution, diseases, sustainability issues, which I need not elaborate much. All are aware about that things. Then next is brackish water, that issue with productivity and quality of the environment, where this culture can be done, especially due to pollution. And in the marine water, there are two ways, open seas or bays. The main limitations, clinches what it is hindering the development or mariculture development is that technologies, the user-friendly technologies and seasonal variations, which is in India when we are looking, I am telling mainly over India now. So the seasonal variations, which is feeling all around in various locations, various seasons. And then the policy, the lack of policy, that is the one of the main issue what India is facing for mariculture development in the country, because fisheries is a state subject, because each state is given fisheries as one of their important things, and they are the sole responsible fellows to make any policy reforms or make the regulations how, what and when it can be used, such type of common property resources. Government of India is giving guidelines only, a broader guidelines in which the states has to make the necessary rules. Has come up with the policy initiatives where the leasing policy sessions were broadened so that many people can utilize these marine areas for farming purpose without hindering the other commercial activities like navigation, fishing or transportation facilities. So in this aspect, when we are looking into the, now I will solely go to sea cage farming. CMFRI's effort started at Visakhapatnam during 2004 to 2007 period, where the first cage has been made, where with trial and error method only CMFRI standardized all these things. At Visakhapatnam Bay, in Bay of Bengal, CMFRI has been launched a cage of 15-meter diameter and 6-meter depth. But that cage didn't stand long, due to that it cannot withstand that climatic variations or the sea turbulence for a longer time, because it was a first initiative and many are unaware how to hold the cage in a particular location, how the fish can be reared inside that. So it was certain extent, one way it is a success and one way it was a failure. And subsequent to that, several design modifications and all were performed, and 6-meter diameter. Initially started with HDP, high density polyethylene cages were made with puff filling so that it will be float. And the expenditure over individual cage were quite huge. In a 6-meter diameter, 6-meter depth cage, it costs around 5 to 6 lakhs that time. So it was something like how a farmer or a fisher flock cannot afford such type of huge investment over such a single cage, because ultimately a cage frame or structure is just to hold the fish, not for harvesting. So fish only we can harvest. So in that line, CMFRA started thinking and started developed a low cost cage made with GI pipes. It from 5 to 6 lakh cost of a HDP cage, it has come down to 1 lakh or less than 1 lakh per cage. A few photographs I have given here, that cage farms which are all located at, and now CMFRA using both the HDP or GI cages, and CMFRA reduced the cost of that cage and standardized the technology, and various types of cages were designed and launched by CMFRA successfully. Now CMFRA is having a cage culture technology which is suitable for that Indian subcontinent with different type of climatic conditions. Year round we can keep the cage in sea and we can go for culture productions. And now and then subsequent to that, all these trials in different locations with the different species, CMFRA did the culture trials, and it was somewhere successful, somewhere not. And wherever it is failed, that has been rectified subsequently and standardized the culture technologies. And later, several demo farm at Gujarat, and this is the cage farm at Karnataka, and so many locations. And subsequently, as a technology once transferred to different levels, now the multinationals or otherwise our corporates in India were taking this cage culture technology as a part of their CSR scheme initially. It has been initiated by Tata and it was quite successful, and the people that in the CSR people, quite many people adopted this technology, and CMFRA played a key role for adoption of such technology. And subsequent to that, the Adani Foundation also started in their CSR activities this cage culture practices for the local people who are getting affected with their project or otherwise under the CSR project in various domains of the country. So in such a stage it has come. Now many corporates are going to start such cage farms in a large scale all along the India. There this policy, the lack of policy hindering a lot for the further expansion of such activities. So in all these aspects, I told about poverty alleviation and social status upliftment and livelihood enhancement. The one classical example which we did is that with tribals of Gujarat. There are some Siddhis, they are African origin. They were brought as slaves in India and they were settled in Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, some regions. And Gujarat, we selected such a community individuals who are interested for doing such type of activities. And we were given some exposure visit to different cage farms all along in India. And they were quite satisfied with this and they are getting interested for such technology. And CMFRA provided the community with some 20 plus number of cages and the technology for mooring and all these things which technological intervention CMFRA did. And we hold their hand for a period of 5 years. Initial 2 years, we gave them financial support along with technical support. Subsequently, we were giving them technical support. Now, they have turned up in such a way that they are the master trainers or the individuals of that society, something like a trickling effect in extension. That technology has been passively transferred to different domains of the society. And now many people are doing such type of farming activities, especially culture activity. This is the culture activity of lobster we initially taught them, that is fattening of lobsters in cages. And subsequently, we trained them with finfish farming and IMTA incorporation into that. And there we have made a technology which was otherwise it was difficult for many people there in these regions, because Gujarat and Maharashtra is having very good lobster grounds. We get year-round lobster juveniles for farming. Earlier, it was something like not an organized group for doing all these things. Old, and they will collect such lobsters in the tide flow and maintain them in some rock pools and all these things. And we developed a technology which is waterless transportation of lobsters. Initially, we used for the Siddhi tribals because we need to make the cost, how much we can reduce the cost, that much profitable the culture technique. So in that aspect, we developed a culture technique with the moist sand transportation of lobsters, where we can transport even up to 10 to 12 hours also. In this one, no water or nothing involved, only wet sand has been used for transporting. Subsequently, it has been upgraded with jute bags and all these things, where the weight has been reduced subsequently. So after this one, such lobsters, undersized lobsters were brought, which is otherwise caught or sold for domestic purpose, fattened in cages for 2 to 3 months. Some good growth, around 1 gram per day, the growth will be there for lobsters. And subsequently, they were harvested, and even each family, that involved family, are getting in a span of 2 to 3 months an average income of more than 1.5 lakh per individual. It was getting, it is quite profitable. That's why it has been expanded very fast. And these are all the importance of this lobster ground along in Gujarat, which I have mentioned. I'm not going in detail due to time constraint. And these resources, but the one problem is there. This is something like capture-based aquaculture, where the seed availability solely depends on the seasons. We cannot depend that particular quantum of seeds we will get. Such a assurance or nothing is there. Such a fluctuation is there. That is one of the main demerits of these things. And but the profitability from this venture is quite good. And this farming practice not only harvesting the natural resources, which is not a sustainable, but it adds to the ecosystem too, because many of these lobsters which are rearing in such type of cages or something for a span of 2 to 3 months, 3 months or something, they are getting, many are getting matured. That is something turned out to be buried females or something. Those will be released back to the natural environment. Plus, otherwise, which is discarded as a low value catch, or otherwise in poultry, what it will go, it has been given good revenue to the existing markets. And then we will rush to the integrated multi-trophic aquaculture, which has been practiced here, which is getting more importance nowadays. In this one, it is something like that waste generated from one culture system is used as an input for the other culture systems. Various trophic level organisms were cultured simultaneously, so that all will grow in a similar domain or a similar environment without harming the culture environment. The concept is that the concept, it is schematically mentioned here, which many are aware about also. When we are looking into the mass scale expansion of cage culture or commercial activities, that waste production from such a large number of cages is one of the main point which we need to consider for the pollution related aspects. So what we need to now we are developing is nutrient neutralization model, one model in which the quantum of nutrients which will be dissolved or particulate matter which can be released, possibility of how much quantum it can be released from a culture systems, we are calculating, and based on that, for absorbing such quantum of nutrients, what are all the different type of resources which we need to incorporate in a particular cage culture system, what that we are venturing into. So in that one, we will estimate from the particular cultural system of a particular finfish, either sea bass, cobia, pompano, whatever it is, based on the quantum of feed and the other management measures, how much quantum of nutrients, either in the form of excreta or feed wastage or other management practice, whatever it is coming. For that, to make the water body as a neutral one, we are keeping other organisms such as bivalves or sea beaks, those which can absorb these things, so that the water will be neutral, that no harmful effect of culture will be affected seriously. So it can various advantage of these things, and the emphasis why it is getting is shown in this picture. And what the intervention sustainable, this is what we did is that in this one we did trials with new trainees whom we are teaching what is aquaculture practices. So we are imparting this type of ideas in their mind from the very beginning itself. So we did trials with the lobster cage farm. This is the pictorial diagram. In this one, lobster will be maintained in cages. Over the top surface of this cages, inside the water, we will tie the net tube rafts of seaweed. What we have observed is that even when we are using this, the water will be very clear. The nutrients released, the uneaten feed, because lobsters will be provided with trash fishes. So the nutrients released from the fish or uneaten fish will be absorbed by the seaweeds which is grown over the surfaces. The cage frames will act as a support for this net tubes from currents, waves, tides, and all these things. And this will provide a shade to lobsters, because lobsters are something like demersal organisms which will try to stay inside dark surfaces. So instead of exposing them to direct sunlight, this when we are incorporating seaweeds, it has provided good shade, and that has added to the growth of these lobsters. Plus the nutrients from the lobster cages added the growth of seaweeds too. So the benefits will be doubled. This is the net tube, and in that one also initially the classical ones are rack method or long line method of seaweeds, where the seaweeds will be tied in a line and it has been allowed to float in the water bodies where we are getting good sunlight and clear waters. In this one, what we did is that we even useless nets which has been damaged. From that one, we select such a suitable mid-size ones and made in the form of a tubes, and inside that similar way the long line how we are tying seaweeds, we have tied inside, and were tied inside the cages. The growth was very good because this will be quite useful in areas generally seaweed we cannot culture in long line or raft methods where turbulent water bodies are more, or turbulence is more in sea in those locations. Gujarat is such a one location. And in this one, when we are keeping net tubes, that of lobsters is very good. Growth of lobsters is very good, and seaweeds are also very good, and the damage due to winds and waves will be minimized. We will not lose much of the grown seaweeds outside the farming system. That increases the profitability. This is the
Maybe in
pictorial
a couple of
representation.
minutes. Divu,
Yeah.
2 to 3
So
minutes.
this is the harvest of lobsters and seaweeds. This is the method how it has been done. Yeah. These are all the results of that such and such things. So we are looking into such a part of IMTA as a IMTA with seaweed, IMTA with the seaweeds in sea cage farming activities, which will be very much challenging because uncertain conditions, especially in deep seas and predation or grazing by the fishes. Where the strong waves or currents are there, which can be managed, where high tidal amplitudes are there. So these are all the things. Bas, thank you. I just rushed briefly to the slides, and more deep things are required. You can please ask with me how much I know so that I can clarify.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you for
that
patient
very
listening.
interesting
I need to tell. Yeah,
and
thank you
very
so much.
visually very appealing presentation. Lovely photographs. Thank you so much for that. So people who have questions, please, you can unmute. There are a couple of questions in the chat box. Let me just go back to that. Sagar Shinde, is he here? Sagar, you can ask your questions directly if you want. Okay,
Yes,
if not, yeah,
yes,
please, Sagar, please go ahead.
Yeah, ma'am. Sir, can we talk this mariculture and sustainability means how actually we can define in proper way, like what we see. There was one of document recently came from UK that they were showing like this mariculture is mariculture is like means provide giving a lot of toxicants to nature and mariculture activity. So what exact proportion or how we can exactly say that yes, this is the activity wherein we can thrust our demand of animal food protein in future, and so these are the proper sustainable ways from which there is no loss or minimum loss. Did you get my
Okay.
question, sir? Okay.
Yeah, I hope because you are asking about the sustainability issue, how much it is sustainable, or
Yes, yes,
how best we
yes,
can do this mariculture in a sustainable way so that the production can be achieved without harming the ecosystem. Is it not?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. So in this aspect only, I spoke about the TIMTA. Now, by standardizing many of these culture activities, particularly in C, I just explained only the outer part of these things. Once we are doing a mariculture practice or we are selecting a site, we are looking several aspects, including the tides, waves, currents, and all year round. Okay. So in many of these farm areas, before venturing into this mariculture activities, we need to have a thorough knowledge about the location and the winds, currents, and wave patterns of that particular location. So and once we are doing a culture of a particular species, we know exactly now already standardized results are there, how much quantum of feed need to be given, how much it will be assimilating, and how much it will be discarded off or otherwise excreted as waste. So the nutrient profile of that is that basic thing, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, or whatever the things, the minerals which is dissociating from that excreta or feed, we are quite aware. Okay. So in this aspect, by putting a quantum, suppose 1 ton of fish we need to produce means how many number of fishes we are keeping, what is the growth rate and what is the feeding rate. Based on that, we can calculate the quantum of nutrients which will be leached or otherwise excreted out from the particular system. And these things either in the particulate form or in the dissolved form, and which way in the currents or the waves, which direction it will be moved from our culture system or otherwise that culture area, how far it will go and what extent it can be gone off, that also we can calculate. There are many methods are available in that aspect. By trapping these things with different niche or otherwise different trophic level individuals or otherwise species can be used. One such one is mussels. Mussels are filter feeders. Generally almost all particulate materials will be absorbed by mussels, and the number of mussel raft or the racks or oysters, mussels or oysters, which can be deployed of commercial importance, which can be deployed in that particular tract where with the waves or currents where the waste will be moving off, which we are already predicted. In those locations, we can keep them off so that they we need to keep in such a number that we can evaluate what the quantum a particular mussel or an oyster can absorb per liter of water or otherwise in per second or per minute, how much water can be filtered. Based on that, we need to keep the number of racks or raft or ropes in such a line that they can absorb to the maximum. Around more than 60 to 70% of such nutrients can be absorbed in such a way. Then comes is the dissolved material, dissolved nutrients. For that particular things, we need to give the particular type of seaweeds, which not all seaweeds will absorb every type of nutrients at a single stretch. And we need to prioritize them based on the commercial importance also, because we are doing into that. So we need to get something back also. Without a return, nobody will venture for that. So in such aspect, other Gracilaria or Capophycus or the various seaweeds or otherwise kelps are available. Those can be deployed in those locations where such nutrients can be immediately absorbed. So when we are looking into that, that's why I told a particular model, nutrient neutralization model. Not all IMTA can impart nutrient neutralization effect. We need to calculate and we need to expedite that things in that one. Okay. 1 second, please just excuse me. One
Okay, sir.
second.
Yeah. Please, participants, before leaving, we have the link for our feedback form, please. Please do fill it up before leaving. I'll just continue the discussion once they was free. Yeah, sure. Phoebe, we all have questions. No worries. Once he's free, we'll take each question one by one. Sagar, did he answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. In between, sir, got call.
person you have called is speaking to someone else. You can wait or call it.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Our director's call was there. That's why I have to attend. Okay, please continue. I hope, Sagar, I might have answered your question. If any more thing is there, please tell me.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, when we talk of seaweed culture, sir, basically it is like a 45-day crop. So, but due to environmental constraints and all, I wanted to know that if I'm a aquaculturist, that who can enter in that business? Means like it is a science. Like if you are doing any business, it is basically a science, and you must know the science. And as our government is promoting seaweed farming, like it is giving more emphasis on seaweed farming. Who are the actual entrepreneurs who will be entering in that business, sir?
There is no demarcation. Such a particular individual only will be the entrepreneur who will be entertained for seaweed farming. Anybody can enter into that field. Okay. And first and foremost thing, what you need to make a venture is that just like what you told, the basic information about how that particular one grows, what are all its basic necessities, and where you will culture. And it is not mandatory that 45 days of culture period only for seaweed. Okay, it varies with the location and the availability of sunlight and based on the nutrients. And bare minimum generally we are considering it is 45 days, so that minimum of 5 to 10 fold increment will be there than the quantum what we have stocked as seed material. So generally for Kappa ficus, it is considering 45 days based on the results what Tamil Nadu at Mandapam, that is the main location where seaweed cultivation is happening extensively. So for them, that particular seaweed, Kappa ficus, it is 45 days in that particular pristine waters where it is water is very clear and the currents and waves are correct and where the sufficient nutrients are there. In such locations, it is 45. But once you are looking into that same species, once you are culturing in Gujarat, which is also very clear, good water, but it is turbulent water. So in that one only, that from the rope or rack method, net tube method, it has been told. There, even with the 40 days also, you will get such a good growth in summer periods. One of this is northwest coast is one of the nutrient rich region in the Arabian Sea, where the productivity of fish or the ecosystem in all ways, it is one of the productive one. So there we will get even with the 30 days, even 5 to 10 times growth in summer. But in winter, that same thing we are culturing there, it takes around 1 month, not 1 month, it takes around 2 months time to reach such a growth. So it is based on climate and the location and the type of seed material what you are using. So anybody can venture into seaweed agriculture. It is not restricted to somebody special as an entrepreneur. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Our government is promoting seaweed farming like to give more emphasis or to women group or especially fisher women group, wherein they can venture in this business. And but there is my question is that as they are in business where they are they are means their aim is to capture fish and just sell, means how much technology we can transfer or we have to transfer to them to get that livelihood upliftment. So
see why it is women oriented. Seaweed, it is not like cage culture or any fish culture activities. You need not have a full-time observance over that particular stock. Seaweed is such a thing that if water is clear, rest of the things are fine. You just seed them in a rope or net tube or wherever it is, and with the sunlight and other things, it will grow in a 45 days. That's why for women, that is ladies will, especially fisher ladies will be doing several works. Household works will be there, and they will be selling the fish what their husbands or fishermen are bringing to the markets and maintaining the house also. Okay, so for women empowerment, this is one-time job. That is, you just go and plant the seaweed materials in the sea or a particular locations. After some 30-40 days, you go and collect it back. It is very less labor intensive. That is based on the tide or something you are doing means Tamil Nadu and even ladies are only going and collecting this. But when it is little deeper water, something like in Gujarat or somewhere, those time only they need men for planting it and taking it back. So it is something like an alternative livelihood avenue for them. It will not give them so much in crores or lakhs or something, but a sustainable income they will get. So, and as
Sorry,
per the total economics and all these things, women once empowered, their house will be empowered. That's why more importance has been given for women empowerment.
sorry to jump in. Yeah, there are a couple of other questions as well. Sorry,
Yeah, please,
to jump in.
Please.
I have a small announcement before going on to the next question. AFS Talks in collaboration with Rainbow Analytics Australia. This will be in the month of May. So those who are interested, please look for the dates and other details on our Facebook page, as well as email us to get further details at 2afstalks@gmail.com. Deepak, can you just put in that email ID into the chat box? Now, Pradeep had a question. Which species is better, Trachonitis blotchy or Mukali? Pradeep?
Okay.
Yes, I wanted to know which one is better, because initially Seemaphore was talking about blotchy, and now I am not hearing about that one. Now Mukali is being there, and seed availability also. I just want to know which is better, and which species seed availability is there.
Okay. So when we are looking into, if we are going for a culture in sea that is having 35 ppt or more than that, Trachonitis Mukali is the best one to give a good growth when compared with the blotchy. And moreover, since it is an Indian variety, it is more resilient to the variations or feed acceptance and all these things. Seed availability, when we are looking into blotchy and Mukali, both are equally available, but the thrust has more been given to blotchy because many of the inland farmers, that is inland saline waters where these shrimps were cultured, Vanami or Monodon were culturing, in those locations generally blotchy is working much better because it can tolerate the crowding stress much more. Along with Vanami also, we can stock them separately in Hapa, and subsequently we can release them to the waters, and we need not have to change the water or something like that, but it will grow fantastically well. So blotchy for low saline areas, and Mukali also will perform much better in low saline, but it can tolerate higher salinities also. So generally in cages, we are preferring, as per our practical experience, Mukali is good for cage and blotchy is good for ponds.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep. Next, we have a question from Miraj Chamadia. With what species do you think we should develop for marine culture which can be equivalent to Atlantic salmon in terms of demand and price in the export market? And what technology has been developed up to now?
Okay, the simplest answer is Latus calcarifer. This is one species of global demand. You culture this particular species in cages or in ponds or in river or anywhere. It is an indigenous species also. We need not worry about it. It is not an exotic one. And it will grow so fantastically, and it is a carnivorous species. But it is having some drawbacks, something like initial stages of their larval cycle, that is initially up to something like 8 to 10 mm size or 10 gram size. It will exhibit lot of cannibalistic behavior. So that feeding and nursery rearing that particular species need to be done with utmost care. If that stage you reached, profitable productivity you will get from that. And in cages, when we are looking into one cage, a 6 meter diameter, 6 meter depth one marine cage, you can stock that same number of fishes what can be stocked in 1 hectare of pond. I hope I might have answered. So we need not develop any new species. And similarly, we are having another species is cobia. In a one year time period, 10 to 12 months growth, it will reach around 8 to 10 kilograms in size. So cobia or sea bass, both are very profitable and at par or much more superior than Atlantic salmon. And this varies with region and taste preference and commercial viability. Okay.
Thank you. The next question, Phoebe has a question. Phoebe? Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mukta, for giving the opportunity. Hi, Dr. Divu. It was a great presentation. I am Phoebe, currently working as assistant professor in JFU. So, just as you mentioned that mariculture is recent to India, and you mentioned as a comment that it is an advantage for us.
Excuse me, Phoebe. Can you speak a little more louder or near a little more closer to your mic?
Okay,
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, is I'm audible, Doctor?
Yeah, you are audible. You are audible. Please.
Yeah. So you were mentioning that mariculture is recent in India, and also you mentioned that we can take that as an advantage so that we can learn from the pioneers, from the setbacks and everything. So I also agree with that, but I just wondering is that there is still one area that we have not yet navigated, that is a genetic intervention. So when we take the examples of Atlantic salmon, all their performance, they have been significantly improved in the FCR values and the growth rate and everything. But still, as per my knowledge is gone in India, as long as CMFR is also concerned, we have not been anything into genetic interventions or like that sort of stock estimation, stock characterization, or improving the performance. So I just would like to know why is this delay, and is there any future plans of CMFRA to get into genetic intervention studies? If there is, which is that species, and why that species, and which trait we are concerning about?
Okay. The first and foremost, when we are talking about Atlantic salmon, they do in temperate regions, they do not have multiple options of fishes. Okay. So they were doing this fishing or fishing also plus culture for a long time, somewhere around 60 to 70 years back they are doing, which I have mentioned very before. They ventured into this and subsequently they faced several setbacks. Based on that, they developed different. But when we are looking into tropical region, we do not have such a dearth of number of species or cultivable species available where the husbandry practices were developed. We in an immediate vicinity, such a harsh way or otherwise in an immediate way, we need not venture into this genetic characterization or genetic improvisations. Okay, but still it is a need of an hour. In that aspect, the genetic characterization of the hatchery bred F1, F2 and wild caught blochi, the Trachinotus blochi, is underway and the results are coming shortly. So the characterization of broodstock of Rhachycentrum canadum, cobia also has been going on the way. Shortly the results will be coming up. But literally, India is not starving with that one or two species. We are having multiple species. When we are looking into these things, CMFRA has developed several other species, Ludjanus joni, Epinephrys coedes, and several other species, which are all of different feeding habits and the growth rates. So that efforts for a genetic characterization and genetic improvisation is on the way, because all the hatchery broodstock which we are maintaining in different sections of CMFRA, we are regularly doing the genetic analysis and genetic characterization of the brooders and the different generations, because F1, F2, F3, such type of generation, some selected good growth, that is selection also being done for a husbandry enhancement, husbandry practice enhancements. So in that aspect, we are characterizing the genetic stocks also for them, so that the inbreeding depression can be reduced and superior quality stocks seeds can be produced from that. So that efforts are there, but we are not solely depending upon all these results to get a commercial productivity in the real situation. That's why. I hope I answered your question.
I hope Phoebe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we are like more into speaking diversification. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, moving on to the next question. This is Bashir. I think Bashir sir from Cochin. I'm not very sure. Please tell us something about river cage culture or pond cage culture. Seaweed or any species.
Okay. And first and foremost, we cannot do seaweed farming. That is that commercially important seaweeds, which are all of quite marine in nature. We cannot do any culture practices of particular ones in rivers or ponds. First and foremost. Or pond, if you are looking into marine ponds, seaweeds are such particular characteristic organism. They need some extent of flow, water flow for their nutrient assimilation and the growth, particular with the dissolved oxygen. Pond rearing of Kappa ficus or any marine seaweeds, it's not profitable, and moreover that carrageenan or agar production potential from the particular ones which is grown in ponds or somewhere is not good. That extraction limits are extraction coefficients are quite less. So for profitability or commercial viability, culturing these seaweeds in sea is the best option, and less than 25 ppt salinity they will not grow much better. So preferably 30 to 35 ppt is the best salinity mentioned for seaweed cultivation. And in rivers where such influxes are there with maybe direct connectivity to seas, with a certain extent saline water will be getting into, there we can do certain extent of Euchima, one particular another variety is there which can be cultivated, but the commercial viability or commercial use of that particular seaweed is not much. It is generally using for consumption purpose and certain extent of alginate extraction or something, but it is not that much a common venture. Most will be preferred with Kappa ficus because PepsiCo and all other companies are preferring it, and agar and this gracilaria and all system of agarophytes, which is having good use in the pharmaceutical industries also. I hope I answered the question.
I hope so too. There's one comment from Arpit that, sir, omega-3 fatty acid is obtained from algae, so we can directly eat seaweed instead of fish. It's a comment there. So
yeah, but I
yeah.
think the type of feed what we are giving to the cultured fish, we can incorporate these things. That feed formulation is a particular art and science where many of the nutrients which we cannot take directly, but fish can assimilate many of these things, and it can get from fish also. And there is an interconversion happening in our body also and in the fish also. So in both the ways, it is correct. We can think in both the domains, even seaweeds. But maybe that acceptance of seaweed directly eating in the form of salad or something, it is not that much common in India. Maybe in Japan, China and all people are eating, but in India it is not so common. So we need to look into those aspects where our particular food habits and our particular culinary tastes all need to merge with that. So both the way it can be managed as a supplementation to the fish as a feed format also we can think about.
There's one final question.
Thank you for the comment.
And Seabass, how to change company feeding from natural feeding, that is weaning.
Yeah,
I think
weaning is a special technology which we need to look into. And sentence will not explain it properly, but still it can be. After particular stages, once only one Seabass is having one issue, it will accept one type of feed. Once we are acclimatizing the juveniles for a particular feed, suppose we are giving them artificial feed or pellet feed from the very beginning, from the nurseries, where once in nurseries and all, they are not giving them with always live feed, pellet feed only you are giving. So they will be weaned and trained in such a way that they will be habituated with such a feed that they will accept it normally. But subsequently, when we are going for a economic cultivation or a mass scale culture, if we are depending on trash fishes, because the growth, Seabass is, many of these culturally important organisms are carnivorous fishes. They prefer to eat other fishes, small sized other fishes. So growth will be much more superior when we are feeding with live trash fish, but it is not sustainable, and sometimes it is not economical. When the capture fishery, that quite much reduction in the catch is their experience, so the cost will be more. In such aspects, sea bass, once you are weaning sea bass or otherwise started feeding them to trash fishes, immediately it will accept. You change from trash fish, from pellet feed to trash fish, immediately the fish will accept. And the easiest way is that starve the fish for a minimum. If generally for nursery rearing and all these things, we used to give them 4 times or 6 times based upon our availability or our easiness. 4 times you just consider. You skip 2 feedings. And in the third feeding, something like 1/3 of the new feed and 2/3 of the previous feed you mix together and feed them. Some will accept, and subsequent to that, you after 1 or 2 doses of that, subsequently you change with half, and then you totally you can change with your new feed. They will accept it fast. But making them reverse back to pellet feed is a quite risky task or difficult task. Many of the times, once you are changing sea bass to low value fishes, it will not accept the pellet feed immediately. Subsequently, it takes time, and then cannibalism and growth reduction all will be observed in cages also. So first we need to have a good idea how much is the trash fish availability and how long it is available. During the whole culture period it is available and in a quite economical rate, then only you shift to trash fish. Otherwise you continue with the pellet feeds. I hope I might have answered.
Yes, I think so too. Thank you, Divu. Before people leave, just if you don't mind sharing your contact, your email address in the chat box. You're on mute. Divu, you're on mute. You have gone mute.
Okay. So I just unshared. I will be sending in the chat box. Okay. Maybe
As a
my
question.
email ID I can.
Which is more sustainable, trash fish or pellet feed?
Always, no doubt, pellet feed is more sustainable. Trash fish is not sustainable. Pellet feed is sustainable. But when we are considering the economic profitability from a culture, based on the availability, maybe some locations where, especially for fisher frogs who are having 1 or 2 boats, or they are regularly getting low value fishes, which otherwise they will not be getting much amount. For them, trash fish is best option. Or otherwise, always pellet feed. For others, it is pellet feed. No doubt in that. And pellet feed is more sustainable one. But in that also, that sustainability also, if you are incorporating our fish meal, it is not that much sustainable because the similar effect in a diverted way we are incorporating. So instead of fish meal, now that black soldier fry extract or other nutrient supplements are adding, then it will be more sustainable.
I hope they was answered everyone's questions.
So in the chat box, I have given my mail ID also. Maybe you can, whenever you want to contact me, you can contact me through that mail ID.
Okay, there's one more question. One final question. What is the guideline for starting marine cage culture in Gujarat? And is anyone doing it commercially there?
No, at present, Gujarat commercial ventures are not there. That is to a particular sole companies or corporate. It has not been given. Instead, self-help groups were entertained with cage culture activities. Now, Gujarat government has not made the final policy brief for leasing of marine domains. Instead, interim policies has been made there. There are a list of things. If the query something like that, okay. So in this one, okay, every deputy director or assistant director office of fisheries, you will get the interim guidelines. What are all the things? The main things, because CMFRA and the fisheries department jointly only formulated the interim plans. In this one, you must have, if you are a fisherman from fisherman background, you will get prior hand, upper hand. Along with that, if you have undergone any CMFRA training and got certificates over cage farming and all this, still more upper hand. And subsequent to that, you need to show which location and whether it is under the site suitability domains which CMFRA has been shared with the Department of Fisheries, Government of Gujarat. If it is falling into that or otherwise nearby regions, it will be sanctioned. And you need to do the culture activities. If you are obtaining subsidy, that is 75% subsidy Gujarat government is giving for cage culture activities. If you are taking such subsidy, mandatorily you need to do minimum of 2 years continuously the cage culture. Otherwise, you are given machine, water all supplies has been given, and you will be blacklisted subsequently. If you are carrying forward, you will be allocated with more areas based on the request and the availability. This is in brief of Gujarat how you can start with this thing. But prior to that, you need to obtain a permission from State Fisheries Department, Government of Gujarat. Unless and until that is not getting, you cannot venture in a commercial way.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll wind up today's extremely informative session. Thank you so much, Divu, for spending so much time with us and answering all the questions in so much detail. So thank you once again, and thank you everyone for having attended this webinar. Please do put your feedback, give us your feedback. And Divu, thank you once again.
Thank you, Mukta Madam, Deepak, and everybody, and who are all patiently listened my talks. Thank you so much. And once again, be in touch. If what are all the things I am knowing about this mariculture or something, surely I can share. Thank you. Thank you for giving this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.